Maybe. Now it says I'm live. Okay. It took a while. I was spinning. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks and I still just have this pink glow behind me. Never got a chance to actually set up those new lights. How in the world can it be 2 weeks and I not get a chance to set that up? Well, there was that big excursion to Alaska. We're going to get into that. That's part of what this show is about. Then I was in New York and I came back and celebrated my 50th birthday. Had a couple of my kids in town. Jen, yeah, just had an amazing time with family. And so I've been busy. Well, tonight we're going to be getting into triangle areas of the world and really getting into, okay, what exactly is this? People talk about, oh, there are vortices out here. Okay, what the heck is that? We're going to be getting into all of that between like Bermuda Triangle, Dragon Triangle, Alaska Triangle. We're going to be talking about this sort of stuff this evening. And I actually did put a challenge out there on the Connected Universe portal in the community section. What's your favorite triangle? And it's not quite that, but out of all the most mysterious triangles of the world, which one intrigues you the most? Which one would you want to go out there and research and explore and hopefully not fall into the abyss in some of these things? You know, people go missing, planes disappear, these sorts of things. And of course, the interesting thing is it doesn't always happen like clockwork. You know, people fly in and out of these triangle areas all the time. People sail boats in and out of these triangles all the time. And for the most part, they're safe, right? But sometimes, you know, one mysteriously disappears and there's no rhyme or reason or rational explanation as to why it does. So we'll be talking about those things this evening. For those that are listening to the podcast version of this later, please join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. There's the public live stream, which airs on the Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel, but in the Connected Universe portal, you get into that after show where we have some special presentations back there. Of course, those that are members get whatever question they want answered. I can't get to all the questions during the actual live stream. Try as best I can, but you're a member of the Connected Universe portal, guaranteed back there in that after show, you're going to get it answered. Of course, there's all kinds of other material there on the Connected Universe portal. We have the community area. I just talked about the challenges that are out there in monthly Q&A videos. Got one coming up here for July. Exclusive articles, insider travel vlogs. You get the explorations into the American Southwest, ancient Egypt, of course, ancient Ireland, all of this wonderful material. All of this and more, connecteduniverseportal.com. I also want to direct everybody to MikeRicksecker.com, the events and tours page. I have a lot up there right now. So we have the Secrets of Real-Time Travel special presentation, which is happening next week, next Tuesday, the 30th. You want to jump on that before that's gone. That's you can do that from anywhere in the world. That's an online special presentation. We also have the Connecting the Universe exclusive masterclass. It's a 4-part presentation. Big day there on November the 9th in New Jersey. Check that one out as well. And then the Mysteries of the Black Force in Germany next April. Encourage everybody to explore the Black Force with us next year, and we'll eventually get, once we know all the exact details, the next Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. That'll be up there as well. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the triangle areas of the world. See, Tom McNicholas is down in the house. Says hello, Mr. 50. Our super chat superstar, Tom McNicholas. Thank you, Tom. Pador Farms, that's Lisa. Thank you as well. Great to see you this evening. Scarlett's in the house, as is Emil. So wonderful to see all of you tonight. Okay, so triangle areas of the world. What are we talking about here? Well, yeah, we're talking Bermuda Triangle. We're talking Alaska Triangle. We're talking all of these really enigmatic areas of our planet. How do they work? You know, how does this vortex happen here? And it's more than just the triangles, because we talk about these sorts of things like Sedona or some of our ancient sites of power like Stonehenge. The pyramids are built on these energetic locations. And it all comes back to, and we've talked about it many times here on the Connected Universe portal, it all comes back down to the Earth's core. And so what's happening here is you have a molten ball of metal, molten iron that's there at the center of the earth, and it spins it around and around and around and creates a magnetic field, a magnetic shield around our earth, which is very helpful because that protects us from the sun. So this is something that we are very happy to have here. And depending on what it passes through, as that magnetic force passes through the Earth's mantle, passes through the Earth's crust, it's interacting with different metals and minerals. And depending on what it's interacting with and the quantity of that metal or mineral, it creates a more localized electromagnetic field there on the Earth. And so that's essentially what we are dealing with in these areas. This is that vortex energy that creates all these other crazy things that are happening, like portals and paranormal activity, all these different things. So we're going to get into a lot of those things tonight. So again, as we're talking about the Earth's magnetic core, okay, is that really important? Is that, yes, we're talking about it protecting us from the sun's rays. We would get fried. There is, it's not just that it's extremely hot. There's radiation that is pounding our planet coming from the sun. And this is something that when the astronauts go up into space, that they have to deal with. That's why they have, specialized suits and the specialized material on like the space station, when we were sending up the space shuttle, when we were sending rockets to the moon and people to the moon and all that sort of thing. They had to wear specialized material to help protect themselves from all of that. Now, there have been times here on Earth where we've kind of lost a lot of that magnetic protection. And the last time that really happened was during the last pole shift. And so there was some recent research that came out here just, I'll say, a couple of years ago. I did mention it in my book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. So it might have been, that came out in 2021. So this might have been close to 3 or 4 years ago. It would have been over 3. So maybe closer to 4 years ago, that they had done research on ancient trees. And it's interesting because you can go back into some of our more ancient material and get ideas of the electromagnetic signature of that era. And they've used this to learn a lot more about our planet during different eras of our history. And so about this time, 42,000 years ago, given the ancient trees, this was our last pole shift. And so, we have the magnetic pole that's kind of creeping along right now where it's at, northwest Canada, and is creeping out across the Arctic Circle. It's headed toward Siberia, so it's headed toward Russia. So it moves a little bit every year, about 35 miles per year, something like that. Well, 42,000 years ago, it had done a flip. So the North Pole became the South Pole and the South Pole became the North Pole. It didn't happen all in one day, but it happened very, very quickly. Like it came down through New York and some other areas of the country and then planet. They ended up flipping. For 400 years, it was flipped. Now, in the grand scheme of the Earth, that's nothing. That's, just a blip. But for humans, that's a long, long time. We're talking, think of what was going on 400 years ago. The United States wasn't even a country back then. Shakespeare's first folio had just been published. There are oryx still living in Europe. A lot has changed in 400 years. We're talking, the early 1700s, 1720s. So what was going on 42,000 years ago for about 400 years? What were the people having to do? Well, this is an era in which we see a lot of cave art. And hang on. Excuse me. Sneeze came. It happens. So 42,000 years ago, we see a lot of that cave art start to appear, where like in France and Spain, a lot of those places, people started hiding in caves because during the daytime, they're not going to want to be out in that. They're going to get absolutely fried. Now, at nighttime, they're going to see all these fantastic auroras in the sky. So this became their lifestyle for a long, long time until it was safe to come out again. We see deep places of the world, like Kuyu and some of these other locations that, we know at different times that they were used, but how old they are has always been questioned. It's debatable as to how old they actually are. Some people believe that they tens of thousands, hundreds of thousand years old, maybe. And so it would have been something that people would have had to hide in. So the magnetic protection of our Earth is very, very important. But again, as it passes through and interacts with those different metals and minerals, we have these crazy things that start to happen, like in the Bermuda Triangle. So I have a couple questions down here already. So Pine Door Farms, have you ever done nighttime UFO Jeep tour of Sedona where they take you to one of the vortexes? So here's what I'm going to say about that area. And even like when I was last in Sedona, there was one of the local indigenous tour guides was even talking about this as he was describing, look at this tree, how it's been affected by the vortex. I would say there's going to be some areas that are a little bit stronger than others, but the whole freaking area is a vortex. There is something about the mineral content under that area, that the whole area, and really much of the American Southwest is one giant energetic hotspot. Some areas are going to be a little bit stronger than others, but that whole area is just really, really teeming with it. No, I haven't done the Jeep tours to do the UFO stuff, but yeah, that whole area is extremely, extremely strong. So, all right, popping over to the Bermuda Triangle. So, why did we start calling this stuff a triangle? Okay, we're very, very familiar with this. Where you go Bermuda to Miami down to Puerto Rico. Because we never called it that until the middle of the 20th century. It kind of had an evolution where as people started realizing, hey, there's a lot of strange things that are happening in this area, they started to kind of piece things together. So in the early 1950s, this was out of a newspaper article, and they're just showing like a lot of the different missing airplanes, Flight 19 and some of these others that have gone missing. And you can really start to see that triangular shape start to take form. Now, they were not calling it a triangle at this point, but just looking at this, somebody can start to take notice. Hey, wait a second here. What is going on here? So in 1952, Fate magazine, an article, Sea Mystery at Our Back Door, in this red highlighted section that you see here. And those that are listening to the podcast version later, again, I encourage you to come out here Wednesday nights, connecteduniverseportal.com. It says here, the region involved, a watery triangle bounded roughly by Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, measures less than 100,000 miles on any one side. But all total, it's several hundred thousand square miles. But this is where we first start seeing that recognition that it does make a triangular shape. And about a dozen years later, this article in 1964 by Vincent Gaddis Vincent Gaddis formally created the term Bermuda Triangle, if I could read my own typing, with his term, the Deadly Bermuda Triangle. So that was his article here in the Argosy. And so that's where it really started being called a triangle. And it was really from there that you had people start to realize this of other areas. So what we're going to do here, I have a couple of video clips that we're going to play tonight. I'm going to play this clip of the Bermuda Triangle, and we're kind of going to break down a few things. And we're going to move on to some other areas and see what you guys think of all this. So here is Bermuda Triangle. This is out of a video that I've posted here some years ago on the Mike Ricksecker YouTube channel, back when it was the Haunted Road Media YouTube channel. So here you go. Of course, the most famous of all these triangle areas is the Bermuda Triangle. Covering 500,000 square miles of water and probably as many stories and legends, the Bermuda Triangle extends from Bermuda to Miami, Florida to San Juan, Puerto Rico. When Christopher Columbus sailed through this area during his first voyage across the Atlantic Ocean, he reported sighting a great flame of fire crash into the sea. This may have just been a meteor, but he also reported experiencing erratic compass readings while traveling through these waters. The legends of the Bermuda Triangle really started to take shape in 1918 when the USS Cyclops went missing with its crew of 309 sometime after leaving Barbados. It was carrying manganese ore, and in a strange twist of fate, its two sister ships were both also lost while carrying metallic ore, but years later in the North Atlantic during World War II. In December 1945, 5 torpedo bombers known as Flight 19 completely disappeared while on a training run. The Navy stated a navigational error led the aircraft to run out of fuel, but no remains were ever found. One of the search and rescue planes with a 13-man crew also disappeared. In 1970, pilot Bruce Gernon flew into what he ended up calling an electronic fog in the Bermuda Triangle and traveled forward 30 minutes in time. Flying from Andros Island to Fort Lauderdale, a flight Gernon routinely made, massive dark clouds that formed up ahead of Gernon's plane morphed into a spiral and swallowed the craft into the vortex. The plane's instruments began malfunctioning as bright white light emanated in the sky. When Gernon came out on the other side unscathed, the city of Miami was below him, having traveled 100 miles in 3 minutes. Bruce Gernon's experience in Bermuda seems to have many similarities to the missing Douglas airplane in the Alaska Triangle, safely traversing the portal while those in the Douglas, unfortunately, did not. These are just a handful of the plethora of tales from this infamous vortex of strange activity. The Bermuda Triangle also contains the famed Bimini Road under its waters, which some speculate may be the ruins of the lost civilization of Atlantis. All right, so yeah, a lot of different activity that has happened there over the centuries, dating as far back as we know to Christopher Columbus, because he was our first real explorer in the area. From there, we would go with indigenous legends, but that's hard to really piece together because of the genocide, of course, during that time. Those islands were just absolutely decimated. So the natives of those islands in the Caribbean are no longer there. Unfortunately, I mean, people, I guess, do call themselves native now, but the original natives to those islands they've basically since been extinguished, or their lineage has basically been mingled with the colonists. So we don't know what legends may have happened before that, what stories may have happened. Unlike when we get to the Dragon Sea, we'll see that there are Chinese legends that go back to like 1000 BC about the waters. So we do have a couple questions here that came in from the chat room. So take a quick look at those. So Scarlett, do the triangles, land and water, have an effect on wildlife? So yes, it's believed that it does. You're talking, here's what's going on. And it affects us too, personally. We are mostly made of water. We have iron in our blood, small particulates of magnetite. So when you're talking about magnetism, it's going to affect those elements that are within our bodies. So, same thing with animals. It's also going to affect them as well. And so it's believed that this is why, one of the reasons why these areas are attracted to cryptids, that there is an attraction to the magnetism in these areas that'll bring these different cryptids, depending on the location. Of course, if it's underwater, it might be some sort of sea monster, the Lake Iliamna monster up in Alaska, or a crack in, some of these other things. And then we have Sarah Yusuf asking, have there been alignments with triangle vortices with X points in the sky? So that would be very difficult because the X points, they're not in the sky. They're way out in space. you um, they are at the edge of, let me bring the photo back up of here. So the magnetosphere of the Earth where it meets the solar wind. And here's another thing. Not only just like way out in space, but there's no predictability as far as when these portals are opening and closing. There have been no correlations made. They seem to open at random. They don't know how long they're going to open for, how big they're going to open, nothing like that. So there's that issue. Plus the Earth is spinning. It's not like the South Atlantic anomaly, which basically is hanging out over mostly Brazil, but it extends as far out as Chile to Zimbabwe in Africa. So it's quite wide and extensive, but that has to do with the way that the molten core of the Earth is spinning, and they believe it has to do with magma chambers under the Earth's surface. So that essentially creates like a dent in our ionosphere and becomes dangerous for, they've had issues with airplanes flying through that. They've had like the space shuttle get knocked out, satellites and things like this flying over that area. But again, that has to do with the Earth and not, the X points out in space. Those are a ways out. I would say there's still a relationship, what we talked about before, with portal activity here on Earth, in the sense that, hey, you're talking about an interaction between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetism, which goes from that spot where these X points are created all the way down to the Earth's surface. So that's why I said, these portals could open up anywhere with that interaction. There's Jack McCarthy. Great to see you, Jack. Hope everything's going well at TA. And Rodrigo, great to see you there from Portugal. All right. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about the naming convention of triangle areas and when that really started. And we're talking like 60s, 70s era. Now, you had another guy at that time, Ivan T. Sanderson, came around and he started talking about these vile vortices. So what the heck are those? Well, Ivan T. Sanderson, by trade, he was a biologist. He was a British biologist and writer. Later became a U.S. citizen. He wrote many books on animals and natures, but he had a profound interest in the paranormal and supernatural. He was an early follower of Charles Fort. That's where we get the term Fortean. And he wrote on these topics as well, aside from just animals and natures. He was organizer of the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained. And probably his most famous work was an article he published in 1972 titled The 12 Devil's Graveyards Around the World, which he described as vile vortices. I know it sounds very, very ominous. So when you look at this, basically, it extends through the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. You see 10 triangles here on this map. The two other points are the North Pole and the South Pole. When you connect them all together, they make a perfect icosagon, which is a 20-sided geometrical object. So you can start talking about sacred geometry, these sorts of things. And you can see that the Bermuda Triangle is in here, as well as the Devil's Triangle out there by Japan. And there are several other locations, of course, across the globe that are included here. The Easter Islands, Hawaiian volcanoes, a number of these locations like this. So this is when people recognizing Bermuda, it makes this triangle area. I think this really inspired Sanderson to look into not just Bermuda, but other locations around the globe that also had this strange activity that was occurring. And again, you can take a look on here. He made all of them triangles. And so now people really had this idea that uh, that these areas are in a triangular shape. And you know, I want people to be careful with that. That everything has to be perfectly within this triangle area. This is something that we were talking about when we were just up in Alaska filming. That yeah, things seem to be pocketed more strongly throughout that area, but it does extend outward. It's not a perfect triangle. Like only that activity is going to happen within that triangle. It's a magnetic field. Magnetic fields don't go perfectly triangular like that. That's a human thing. That's us trying to come up with some sort of rational idea that we can follow. So we look at going back to Bermuda here. Well, it seems to be kind of a triangle. Now, we had things happen outside of this as well, but it helps us as humans to kind of visualize an area where things are going to happen. So let's pick, three main points of this area, and we'll call it a triangle. Humans tend to like things in threes anyway. So there we go. So then Sanderson comes along with the vile vortices. They're all triangular in nature. So therefore, whenever another area would pop up with a lot of this strange activity, like what Sanderson's talking about with the vile vortices, like with what we're seeing there in the Bermuda Triangle, causes us to call everything else a triangle area. So even, okay, the Alaska Triangle, when we get to that here in a few minutes. And I have new clips from that too, from when I was just up there in Alaska here the other week. I was only like a week and a half ago. It's crazy. But that was once called Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, which is really kind of bizarre, right? But because everybody's really into Bermuda. And so the nomenclature just kind of came along. So we saw on Sanderson's map there, the Dragon Triangle. And so that's here in the Pacific, around Japan. And well, you know what? I have another video clip. So let's go ahead and play this one, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Dragon Triangle. The Dragon Triangle is also known as the Devil's Sea, or the Pacific Bermuda Triangle, and spans from Japan to the islands of Bonin, and then deep into the Philippine Sea. Legends of the Devil's Sea span far back into history, with the dragon moniker dating back to Chinese fables from around 1000 BC, which speak of dragons living under the water's surface who attack passing vessels. An early account of trouble in the Dragon Triangle dates to the days of Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, who lost some 40,000 crew aboard ships bound for an invasion of Japan in the late 13th century AD. In the 1800s, a mysterious woman sailing a strange vessel through the waters of the Triangle was spotted, and the boat was described as being in the shape of a traditional Japanese censer for burning incense. It's not known where she was headed and, thought to be ghost-like, was never seen again. Paranormal stories like this caused the Japanese to name the triangle Ma no Umi, or Sea of the Devil. In the 1940s and 50s, scores of Japanese fishing boats and military ships disappeared in the Dragon Triangle in the area between Miyake Island and Iwo Jima. So in 1952, the country sent an investigative team aboard Kaiomaru No. 5 into the mysterious waters. Contact was lost, and long after they first set sail, remnants of the ship were discovered in the sea. It's unknown what happened to the 22 crew members and 9 scientists aboard. Following this incident, the Japanese government declared this area of the Dragon Triangle dangerous for marine voyage. All right. So there we go. The Dragon's Triangle. That always blows my mind. These couple of different things here about that story. So Kublai Khan, in that video, I mentioned, his invasion of Japan. So one thing I came across, or something that I came across, as I dug deeper into this after I created that video, was that it didn't just happen one time. He launched that invasion twice. The same exact thing happened both times that he sent tens of thousands of troops into these ships across the waters, and storms blew up and annihilated the fleets twice. Now, the storms that they called this, these were called kamikaze storms, and that's where we got that's where they ended up getting the term for the kamikaze fighters during World War II, was from these storms. So that happened to Kublai Khan twice. And then the other thing was Karamaro number 5. I mean, here is, okay, all of these disappearances keep happening to these shipping vessels. They've got all these strange legends and stories and rumors. So fine, let's send out a scientific team to look into this. Is there something legitimate to what's going on here in this area? And they lose the scientific team. They have no idea what happened to them. They just lost contact. And then all of a sudden, pieces of the ship start, floating along the water, start washing up on shore, and this sort of thing. It's like, what the heck happened? So that's when the Japanese government was like, yeah, it's just unsafe for marine voyage through these waters. We don't recommend it. Please don't do it. Again, it doesn't mean that every single ship that goes through there meets some ill fate, but just the fact that they send a scientific team out there and they meet their doom, just absolutely bizarre. But there we go. It happened. So Emil is asking, I read something about Bermuda Triangle, and some believe that's where the lost city of Atlantis is. So Bimini Road, some people believe that might be some remnants of the lost city of Atlantis. I don't go as far as saying that. I believe it is indicative of some sort of civilization that was there. We find it on the Piri Reis map, the formation of the Bimini Road, whether that was a wall or some other sort of formation. We see on the Piri Reis map the exact same structure that's on an island there. And this is before the sea levels rose to cover it all up. So it was something. I'm not going to say it was Atlantis, but some sort of civilization. I do believe so. All right. So that is the Dragon Triangle. Let's go ahead and move to, okay, we got to do it, the Alaska Triangle. So, one of the reasons why we've taken, we lost a week there, right? Number of different things going on with me. I was traveling, and one of those places was to Alaska. I can't talk about specifics of what I was doing up there. I can say that I was filming for a show, but can't tell you anything about that yet. But we were covering the Alaska Triangle. And so I went out to some different areas again and did a little of my own filming. It rained the whole time. Middle of summer, and it's like, 85, 90 degrees down here and humid, and up there, well, yeah, technically it was humid because it was raining the whole time. But it was like 50 degrees and chilly and cold, and it can get like that in Alaska. I lived there for 3 years. Sometimes you get some really pleasant days that are like in the 70s and it's beautiful. And you'll get those days where it's 50 and rainy and in the middle of July. So that's kind of what happened to us. We made it all work and it came out wonderful. So while I was up there, you're going to see this in the clip here. Tom McNicholas, our Super Chat superstar, he had made a comment on, I think it was on one of my posts, asking about the Black Pyramid. So I do address that in this clip a little bit. I have a much bigger, longer piece that I'm going to be providing in the after show tonight. So those members of the Connected Universe portal during the after show, you guys are going to get the longer version of this clip here, which does touch on the Black Pyramid or the Dark Pyramid, whichever one you want to call it. The Alaska Triangle. Basically, that's an area that extends from Juneau to Anchorage, which we are near here, up to Utqiagvik in the north, which used to be named Barrow. This is an area that is rife with strange activity. The most prevalent thing is all the missing people, the disappearances that just are absolutely mind-boggling. 16,000 people since 1988. Why only as far back as 1988? Because that's when they started keeping track.
numbers. Over 40 planes are still missing since 1962. Again, as far back as they've kept those records. But we know that there are many more. This is an area that's rife with UFO activity, paranormal activity, cryptid sightings like the Kushtaka and Sasquatch, and so many other things happen here that it has become one of these bizarre triangle areas like the Bermuda Triangle. In fact, some people refer to it as Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, which is kind of a misnomer. It's the Alaska Triangle. So you can't really see it behind me, but there's Flat Top Mountain. For our filming today, we're going to lose the view, but this is where I found that current of energy running from Flat Top Mountain. Can't even see it today, down to Anchorage. Usually a beautiful view. So people ask me about the Black Pyramid. Well, that is supposed to be under Mount Denali. There's been a lot of speculation as to what this pyramid is, and a few people have come forward with some connections to it that have said that, it's a secret underground base, that there are extraterrestrials working with the human military on some different projects under there. Some say it's a giant power plant that is so large, several times larger than the pyramid at Giza, that not only could it power all of Alaska, but would even spread into Canada. Terrible to think about people going missing, and thousands of people have gone missing in the area of the Alaska Triangle. And just coming here to Flat Top Mountain, here's another missing persons notice right here. It's extremely sad.
Yeah, so you can see the rain coming down there. It was getting worse as I was walking back down the hill. So I was a little bit winded, going up, having to climb up there. And normally I'd be like, okay, let me catch my breath and then start recording. But I mean, the rain was coming down, and I was like, okay, let me do this quickly. And normally I would have stayed right there too. I'm like, I got to walk back down. And yeah, by the time I got back down to the car, it was coming down. It was raining a bit harder there than my experience with Alaska is. Yeah, it's going to rain there, but when it does, it's more of a light rain. And it was actually coming down pretty well there at times. So go figure. And yeah, you can see that by the time I got over to where that missing person sign was, I was drenched. But we made it all work on that day. Even so, that was at Flat Top Mountain. We ended up over at McHugh Creek, which is where that first part of the video was filmed at. I did that the day beforehand, and the day before was super windy. That particular day, they were afraid that if it was going to stay windy like that we wouldn't be able to shoot it all. And yeah, Rodrigo, that little microphone I have on me with the little wooden jammer, that was really helpful. And I do have a clip, like right there at the railing, and it's just all completely open across the inlet. That's really windy, and it still does a pretty good job, but that one breaks up a bit. So yeah, so Sarah's making a comment here. Missing people wandering into specific areas reminds me of scientific sampling. I mean, maybe, some of it. So when it comes to the missing people, I mean, some are just very naturally going to get lost in the woods. It happens all the time. People lose direction, lose where they're going, and seriously get lost in the woods. They might get eaten by a bear up there. The bears do happen. They even have, signs at the trailheads what to do in case of a bear. Moose will just gore you. So there's a lot of dangers out there. But the extreme number of people that go missing in Alaska is just really uncanny, especially given the low population that's there. I mean, you have a state that's 2.5 times the size of Texas. Massive. The entire population is about the size of the city of San Francisco. Yeah, it's like there's nothing to compare. It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's hard to explain so many of those disappearances, and you have some really high profile ones, like the The Boggs Baggage disappearance in 1972. You're talking about the House Majority Leader, talking about a very well well-respected politician in Begich there in Alaska. He was actually voted in that October. It was election season, and he actually won his election, even though he was missing. And they ended up having to run a special election. Don Young won, and Don Young was their representative there for like the next 50 years. No term limits, so 25 consecutive. It's like a record. At least on the Republican side it is. And so there's a lot of speculation as to what happened with them. Nothing's ever been found, and this is just one. Now they're over, like I mentioned at the beginning of that clip, there are over 40 missing airplanes still to this day. And that's just from 1962. There are others that are missing since before that. They don't even count in the numbers. One of my favorite stories, the missing Douglas Skymaster from 1950, is not included in that number. This was the largest search and rescue mission in U.S. history at that time. And they utilized spy planes. Nothing was ever found. A couple of different ideas. So they lost contact just as they were about to enter the Portage Pass down there by Whittier. So they could have crashed in the pass, right? No wreckage. Did they smack the side of the mountain? There's actually a more localized type of vortex. It's like it's a geographical or gravitational type of vortex into the side of the mountain. So basically, as you kind of near the mountain with the plane, it almost kind of like pulls you in. However, on that particular day, because the conditions weren't good, they were the type of conditions that vortex would actually help push you through. So did they end up in a glacier somewhere, and then we're not going to find them again for like 100 years from now? Did they fall into the water, crash into the water, and we're not going to find them for years and years and years? All these possibilities are on the table. There was a Globemaster airplane, 1952. That went missing. Nobody had any idea what happened to him. 50 some odd guys were on board. 2012, 60 years later, they finally found it. They got caught in a glacier, ended up 12 miles from where they believe it originally crashed. Crazy stuff. So those things are on the table, Or, okay, if they did crash, was it the severe weather conditions? Did it have something to do with the navigational equipment going awry? So things that happen in these triangle areas is that compasses will suddenly start going crazy. Navigational equipment would just go wonky. Flight 19 talked about that sort of thing happening. Their compasses were doing all kinds of screwy things. And so they weren't even sure if they were still on course. So one of the ideas of what happened with the Princess Sophia, which is the Alaskan Titanic, that you had a captain of this ship that had sailed through there countless number of times, and he knew where the Vanderbilt Reef was, right in the middle of the Lynn Channel. Somehow ended up right on it. Now they were in a snowstorm, but you still had your navigational equipment to help guide you through, and that's what they were having to do. And so he knew to steer clear of that, but somehow they still ended up right on top of it. So one of the ideas is that their navigational equipment just wasn't working properly. So a lot of different ideas that we can talk about here with these triangles and with what the power of the vortices is doing there. So Rodrigo says, bears are like mythological beings for us here in Portugal. Last year, one came in from Spain, and the news seemed like they were talking about Bigfoot. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I haven't really heard about bears out in Portugal, but that's interesting for sure. Yeah, here, where I'm at in Ohio, we don't really have bears, but in Alaska, it's bears everywhere. Down in the Carolinas, the Smoky Mountains, a lot of bears. So yeah, we have a lot of bears here out in America. Tom is asking, were the missing happening during a certain time of year or during weather conditions? I mean, all times of year. all times of year it happens. Because people go out there. Yeah, and it seems bizarre to me. I don't understand why people do it, but some people are really into that sort of thing. Hiking out in the middle of winter. You're not going to catch me doing it. It's too dang cold, right? But some people really like doing that sort of thing, that they're going to, and it's almost like, we're going to brave the elements. We're going to test ourselves. We're going to test our mettle and go out there into the wilderness in the middle of wintertime. And people will hunt as well during that time. People might do like some ice fishing or things like that. There's a lot of wonderful streams in Alaska that you can fish on, and you get huge salmon like this. I mean, massive. And I knew guys that would go out there and do that, and they'd go out there on the weekend, do a bunch of fishing. They'd be like, "Hey, we're gonna have a cookout this week at the behind the office, behind the building, and on base." Okay, cool. Well, what are you cooking? And they'd have these huge, massive salmon steaks like this that they're like almost falling off the grill. They're so huge. Everything's bigger up there. So yeah, at all times of year, Tom, you can't really pinpoint yet. This is the time that people go missing. It's all times of year. Scarlett's saying she's staying away from Alaska. You don't have to stay away from Alaska. It's very, very beautiful up there. Very, very beautiful. I definitely recommend visiting. Visit during the summer. The winter it gets very, very cold up there. But very, very beautiful place to visit. Get that, fresh, clean air up there. The mountains are magnificent. They're absolutely beautiful. The wilderness is beautiful. And as long as you just are smart about it, I wouldn't call it dangerous, other than if you venture too far off the path. Sure, things can happen. I mean, it's just use your brain. And there's plenty of things to see where you don't have to venture out into the wilderness to go do. You can go down to Seward and take some of those boat rides to go see orca, and you'll and it's beautiful because the orca will be jumping up out of the water. You'll take the boat past the glaciers and see the glaciers falling into the ocean, and it's just wonderful to see that. And there's Karen down there saying Alaska is beautiful. Yeah, it really, really is. You have to at least go visit it. And if you do something like take one of those Alaska cruises out of Seattle and just kind of go up the coast of there. Some of them don't even go as far as Anchorage. Some do. And you get to see so much. You don't really even have to venture that far out into the land. You get to see all kinds of wondrous beauty. So I definitely recommend it for sure. So, all right. So that is going to about do it here for our public broadcast. We have much more that we're going to be covering during the after show. Like I said, I have a bigger clip there on the Black Pyramid, the Dark Pyramid. Tom wanted to know more about that. I remember, Tom, your comment on my post. So got that longer clip back there. So we'll talk some more about these things during the after show. Again, those that are listening to the audio podcast of this later, connecteduniverseportal.com. Join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, everybody. That will do it for tonight. Till next time, time really exists.